Good afternoon. In a short while, we will be joined by our guests from the UN Population Fund, Leila Sharafi, the Chief of the Gender Human Rights Branch at UNFPA, and Emily Filmer-Wilson, the Human Rights Advisor at UNFPA, will be here to brief you on UNFPA's latest State of the World Population Report. Tomorrow at 11:30, there will be a briefing here sponsored by the Permanent Mission of Canada to the United Nations on Indigenous Land Rights. The briefing is entitled the briefing is entitled Chiloctin, Nation Celebrates 10-Year Anniversary of Historic Indigenous Land Rights Case. That's at 11:30. We will have our briefing at noon. Also, around 5:30 p.m. this afternoon, Philippe Lazzarini will be at the Security Council stakeout, along with the Foreign Minister of Jordan, and that is following the Security Council open meeting on UNRWA. Staying in the region, our humanitarian colleagues today launched an appeal for more than $2.8 billion to allow United Nations agencies and our partners to address the most urgent needs of 3.1 million people in Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and that is through the rest of 2024. For this response, we need to see major changes in operating conditions on the ground. Humanitarian organizations must have safe and sustained access to all people in need across the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. We need more entry and supply routes by land into Gaza, including to the north, as well as the greater use of Ashdod port. We need fewer constraints on our movements inside Gaza. We also need to be able to bring in critical humanitarian items, including communications equipment and protective gear for UN staff. We need visas, permits for aid workers, and we need timely and flexible funding. Despite the ongoing hostilities in Gaza, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports that the UN, that we and along with our partners are efforting to reach people in need across Gaza wherever they may be. On Monday, the World Health Organization and its partners reached 2 hospitals and medical facilities in northern Gaza. In a social media post, the Director General of WHO, Dr. Tedros, said the mission was severely delayed, leaving less time for assessment of the facilities. He said the removal of dead bodies from Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City is ongoing, and at the Indonesian hospital, reconstruction efforts are underway as the facility currently stands empty. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Medical Relief Society facility continues to receive trauma patients and provide basic health services. Dr. Tedros said that WHO will provide fuel and medical supplies, which are urgently needed. In southern Gaza, an engineering team from UNRWA is assessing the agency's facilities in Khan Yunis for the possible return of displaced people who need shelter following the withdrawal of the Israeli troops from that area. This morning, the Security Council held a meeting on the role of young persons in addressing security challenges in the Mediterranean. Briefing council members was Rosemary DiCarlo, the Undersecretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs. She told the council members that it is estimated that 1 out of 4 young people around the world is affected by violence or armed conflict. The young, especially women, she added, are more vulnerable to neglect, abuse, and exploitation, and young people are more likely to be recruited by armed groups when they have no other livelihood opportunities. Ms. DiCarlo pointed out that these grim facts and figures are borne out in the unfolding calamity in one part of the Mediterranean. The 7th of October attack on Israel by Hamas and the war in Gaza has destroyed the lives of many young people. She noted that 70% of the population in Gaza is under the age of 30, and almost all have been exposed to unprecedented levels of trauma, violence, disease, and food insecurity. Her remarks were shared with you. Turning to Ukraine, the humanitarian coordinator in Ukraine, Denise Brown, today condemned the latest wave of deadly strikes across the country, including in the northern city of Chernihiv. According to Ukrainian authorities, the attacks killed and injured civilians, including children, and damaged homes and a hospital. Ms. Brown underscored that under international humanitarian law, civilians in hospitals must be protected at all times. Aid workers in Chernihiv are on the ground supporting people impacted by the strikes, including with psychosocial and legal assistance, complementing the work of first responders and rescue services. Meanwhile, the International Organization for Migration and non-governmental organization partners are mobilizing emergency repair materials and other supplies, as well as cash assistance. In southern Ukraine today, an interagency humanitarian convoy delivered aid to Primorovsk town in the Zaporizhzhia region. This support is from UNICEF, the World Health Organization, and other humanitarian partners. It included drinking water, medical supplies, hygiene items for people impacted by shelling, which often disrupts electricity and water supplies. Turning to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, our peacekeeping colleagues there report that with logistical support from the UN Mine Action Service, a weapons marking and registration operation is currently taking place in Goma and Beni in North Kivu. The initiative was launched by national authorities to enhance the monitoring and tracing of weapons possessed by the Congolese army and police, while also addressing the proliferation of small arms and light weapons among civilians in armed groups in conflict-impacted areas. With an estimated 300,000 weapons in civilian hands, this operation will help to combat the illicit circulation of these weapons and to strengthen control. Our peacekeeping mission in nearby Central African Republic strongly condemned today the attacks against civilians by armed groups in the south, east, and in the west of the country. These attacks, which have taken place since the beginning of the month of April, have claimed many lives, including those of women and children. In Zemio, in Haute-Bumu Prefecture, peacekeepers are continuing to conduct their daily patrols to restore calm and secure the area, which is a priority for them. The mission has also established a temporary operating base in the Wampende Prefecture, also to protect civilians. The mission again urged armed groups and self-defense groups active in the country to immediately end the violence and highlighted the urgent need for accountability. And it's just to stay on the African continent, you noted that yesterday we confirmed that the Secretary General had indeed received the resignation letter of Abdoulaye Bathily, his special representative in Libya. The Secretary General accepted the resignation. The Secretary General is, of course, very grateful for the work that Mr. Bathily has done and for his leadership at UNSMIL and for his tireless efforts to restore peace and stability to Libya. The Secretary General reiterates that we are committed to continuing to support the Libyan-led and owned political process. And of course, you also heard from Mr. Bathily quite clearly yesterday. On Haiti, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is telling us that as violence continues to drive humanitarian needs, supply constraints and transport costs remain a major challenge to assist close to 90,000 people displaced across 87 sites in the capital, Port-au-Prince. As a reminder, more than half of those displaced are women and a third of them are children. Meanwhile, with the rainy season underway in Haiti, the risk of flooding is another threat to displaced people and those in the most disadvantaged areas. Despite the challenges, the humanitarian response continues. Yesterday, the World Food Program delivered more than 14,000 hot meals to displaced people in the capital area, as well as 226,000 school lunches across the country. Meanwhile, the World Food Program, through logistics partners and our humanitarian response depot, has facilitated air transport of humanitarian supplies into the country through Cap Haitian in northern Haiti. The operation began last Friday with supplies from the Pan American World Health Organization, WHO in Panama, as well as the International Organization for Migration. And the UN Development Program today released a report showing that Afghanistan's women entrepreneurs faced a range of hurdles and high cost of doing business. Deepened discrimination, operational constraints, coupled with severely weakened financial system, has found 41% of the over 3,000 women surveyed are in debt, of whom only 5% had received loans from banks or microfinance institutions. UNDP notes that movement restrictions, with 73% reporting being unable to travel even to local markets without a male escorting family members further heightens the challenge. However, the report notes that women are finding ways to tackle the challenges, and 80% of women-led enterprises rely on their business revenues as their primary source of income. More on the interweb. We have another country that paid up in full, but it's not going to be a quiz today. It's just sharing an interesting factoid. Excuse me? Oh, no. No, in fact, our quizmeisters found this interesting factoid. The latest member to pay its dues is Antigua and Barbuda. Despite its name, the country includes a third island. Can anyone name that island? It's uninhabited. It is called Redonda. It is uninhabited, but it was documented by Christopher Columbus in 1493 when he named it Santa Maria de la Redonda. And did you know that Redonda has its own king? But that's another story. I would encourage. I know it's a special royal report from Maggie. So after you're done with the briefing, you may want to Google it. But all that, we thank our friends heartily in St. John's. We are now at 101. Edith.
Thank you, Steph. Does the Secretary General have any response to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's brushing off calls for restraint and saying that Israel will decide how to respond to Iran's attack, and the Iranian president's warning of a massive response if it does?
We're seeing a lot of rhetoric, increasingly dangerous rhetoric in the region. Rhetoric is also dangerous. And we are very concerned, and we continue to call for maximum restraint. As the Secretary General said, the world, let alone the region, cannot afford another open conflict.
And a follow-up on SRSG Batule. How long is he going to remain in the post, or is he going to remain in the post while the Secretary General searches for a successor?
He has told us he will remain in the post till May 15th. So obviously, the search, we've already started to think about the search. Yeah, and he'll remain in the post till May 15th. Ibtisam, then Amélie.
Human Rights Watch issued a report today about settlements in the West Bank. And in the report, they are saying, I'm quoting, Israeli settlers have assaulted, tortured, and committed sexual violence against Palestinians, stolen their belongings and livestock, and threatened to kill them if they didn't leave permanently, etc. So the report is very long, and also it says that the Israeli military either took part in or did not protect Palestinians from violence. Do you have first any comments about that report?
This is the issue of violence in the West Bank. The increasing violence in the West Bank is something we've been seeing, not just since October 7th, but before. It is extremely worrying. There are the targeting and the killing of civilians is to be condemned and needs to be fully investigated. The Secretary General will be speaking tomorrow at the regular Middle East monthly briefing. He will be speaking to the situation in the region, including that in the West Bank.
I have a follow-up, because you have been warning through whether statements or reports that were issued by OCHA on the issue of settlers and their violence. And yet, things are getting actually worse. And the question here, what is the Secretary General doing in order to put more pressure on countries like the US, who has more leverage, and they are on the Israelis, especially given the fact that the report is saying, and it was before also reported that the Israeli army is part of this violence. It's not individuals, it's something systematic.
I mean, I'm not refuting the fact that we have seen Israeli security forces involved in some of these incidents. This is an issue that Tor Venislan has pressed the Israeli authorities on, and has also been raised in many contacts that the Secretary General, Mr. Venislan, have had. Amélie.
Thanks, Steph. Since there's a meeting on UNRWA this afternoon, could you give us any update on the OIOS investigation?
I don't really have anything to share with you at this point. I may in the next couple of days, but I know one issue that has, a question that has come up is the issue of the cooperation with the Israeli authorities. And I can tell you that from what OIS tells me, they have had a number of meetings and cooperation from the Israeli authorities on this, but I hope to have something for you in the next few days.
And on the other report from Catherine Colonna, the date was officially 20th, which is Saturday. Can you tell us what is the timeline and when she's gonna give a report to
Madame
the
Colonna
Secretary
will
General?
be in New York at the end of this week. I can probably assure you that we will not see each other on Saturday. We hope to have her. We hope to have her be here in this room on Monday, and you will have had access to the report on Monday. Deji, then Benny.
Yeah, a couple of questions. First, also on UNRWA. Do you know how many countries who suspended the funding now resumed the funding?
I don't. A number of them have. I don't have that number on top of my head.
Okay.
But UNRWA would be able to tell you.
Second, do you have any update on the role of the UN on the temporary pier that U.S. is constructing in Gaza? Because it seems it's fast approaching the finish time.
Discussions are ongoing. What is important for us is that we will support any plan to increase the delivery of aid, whether by sea, whether by air, and of course, most importantly, by land. But whatever is worked out, and this is obviously part of the discussions, we need to be able to distribute aid in a way that is safe for us, that is safe for those who receive it, and is within with the principles of impartiality and all the humanitarian principles that we have when we just need to distribute aid
And
independence.
And
of
last
course.
topic on the full membership of Palestine. It seems the Security Council, they're going to have the vote tomorrow or maybe on Friday. We don't know that yet. I know someone asked you before, what's the position of the Secretary General on
What
this?
was my answer when that person asked me?
It's up to member states.
Thank you.
But some people ask me to ask you this question. So technically speaking, if Palestine applied for full membership, they send the letter to Secretary General, right? If Palestine sent the letter every single week, like continuously, will the Secretary General handle that letters and send that to?
The Secretary General will continue to handle all requests for membership as per the responsibility given to him by the Charter, and will continue to follow the procedures.
Okay.
Benjamin, ask me a question I haven't been asked.
Actually, I'll ask you a question you have been asked just now. But I have two questions. Both of them are easy. As you know, I always ask easy questions. The first one, to follow up on Desi's question on membership. As you well know, there is a congressional law, actually, that was signed by President Bush and then President Clinton in a different, that bars funding for any international organization that accepts Palestine as a full member. So shouldn't the UN have at least some position. I know it's up to member states, but since you might lose more than
Look,
24
the Secretary General,
of
as
funding.
Secretary General of the United Nations, has certain responsibilities, right? As the Secretariat to the member states, he is following those procedures, following that responsibility. There is a process outlined in the Charter on how to gain membership. There are laws, we're well aware of the situation in the U.S. That's something for the U.S. government to comment on. We can only follow what is in the Charter.
Isn't the Secretary General one of his responsibilities?
A little closer, because everybody
Is
can hear
one
you.
of the Secretary General's responsibility to secure funding for the United
The
Nations?
Secretary General's responsibility is to be the Chief Administrative Officer, as per outlined in the Charter. He is following his duty as to the Charter. Member states will have to live up to their own responsibilities and their own duties to support this organization.
Second question I have on an event that happened this morning. There was firing of a drone from Lebanon that injured a lot of Israelis in the north. Reports are saying, and I understand that there was already a reprisal, but the reports are saying that the firing occurred from Nakura. Now, has the UNIFIL
We're-
headquarters been?
Yeah.
Was it near UNIFIL?
We've seen
headquarters?
those. We've seen those reports. We're also obviously concerned about the casualties. Yet another example, I think, of the tensions that we're seeing across the blue line. And this incident will be investigated by UNIFIL. We'd asked for some updates. I hadn't received anything by
But
press
Nakura
time.
is the site of UNIFIL's headquarters.
That is a fact.
Has anybody
But I mean,
noticed anything
whether
next
or
door?
not that this attack was launched in the geographical area of Nakura, that is not a fact that I have. But we're obviously
Can we
looking into
find
the
out? Because, I
situation.
mean, from what I understand.
As I said, our UNIFIL colleagues are looking into it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yvonne.
Thanks, Steph. You said that the SG will brief the Council tomorrow. Will the focus of his briefing be settler violence, or is that just one aspect of
It'll
a wider briefing?
be an overview, as this is the briefing that is often done by Mr. Venislan, so it's an overview of the situation.
And when will you be able to send his remarks to us?
As soon as they are sealed and ready for reproduction for the media, so hopefully, hope springs eternal in Ireland. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. You're probably familiar that.
If you could put your mic,
Yeah,
and if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, I'm Ivo Pulic. I'm from Al Jazeera Balkans, and about draft resolution about genocide committed in Srebrenica '95. It's around, and we have heard that Russia is eager to put some amendment about that, what is connected with Gaza situation. Can you confirm that?
No, I can't. I mean, I think you'd have to speak to the to the missions concerned. The members of the General Assembly are debating a resolution. They will put forward their positions. Our position on the events and the genocide that took place in Bosnia is clear. But this is a discussion among member states. You need to check with them.
Just a following question. It's about Mr. Vuk Jeremic, who used to be president of the General Assembly. He was here last 7 days lobbying against that resolution. How you comment that former president of General Assembly is lobbying here United Nations against genocide who was recognized by?
Look, as I said, member states are having a discussion on a resolution, as they do on many resolutions. The Secretariat's position has been clear. Mr. Jeremic, who I did not know was here, I'm sure is here and is not is no longer the president of the General Assembly, so it's not for me to comment on his activities.
I mean, he met with Mr. Francis, with the current president.
You're welcome
About
to
the
speak.
topic,
No,
yeah.
you're welcome to speak to my colleague Monica Grayley, who speaks on behalf of the president of the General Assembly.
Thank you, sir.
And welcome. Okay, we will get our guests, and don't go away.